Students, in the last lecture, we all were talking about the circulating fluid. I told you the higher animal or the more complex animal, they comprise of the most sophisticated circulating fluid, and that circulating fluid is nothing but the blood. So today we all will talk about the blood and blood's component, what it comprises of. So let us discuss about the blood in detail. Now, when we talk about the blood, so the blood is having the two most important component. The first component is the plasma, and second component is the formed element. When we talk about the plasma, let's do like that. Just a minute. Okay. Huh. So when we talk about the plasma, so plasma also have the many components means which are dissolved in it. Plasma is a liquid part of the blood, and it is comprised of the maximum portion of the blood. When we will separate the plasma with the formed element, you all will find that this plasma is slightly straw colored. Now, why? What gives this plasma the straw like colored? Means slight yellow, you can say. So when we talk about the components of the plasma, so plasma comprise of the various protein like albumin, globulin, fibrogen, all this type of proteins are present. It comprises of the hormones. Hormones, why hormones? Because endocrine glands, the glands which produce the hormones, are called as the endocrine glands. Endocrine glands are ductless gland, means they do not have the portal system, or they do not have their own ducts to supply their hormones to the target organ or the target cell. So what they do, they simply empty or they dump their hormones into the blood portal system, and it gets dissolved into the plasma. Then thereafter it comprises of the nitrogenous wastage. We all have already discussed in detail about it. Then what other things plasma have? It has the nutrients like glucose, it have the macromolecules. So all these things gives a slight yellow color, and the maximum portion of the plasma is the water. Then formed element are the red blood cells, white blood cells, and the platelets. Now, one by one, we will talk about the formed element. First formed element is the red blood cells. Now, red blood cells, why it's red and why it is called as the red blood cells? Because of the presence of the hemoglobin. Now, red color, when we talk about the blood blood platelets, sorry, blood red cells. So blood red cells, they lose their nucleus at maturity. Now they lose their nucleus, that means they are deprived of the genetic material. Why do so? Because the function, they are very specific. Now see, previously also multiple times I had discussed about it that the blood cells function is red blood cells function is to help, or you can say to aid into the respiration. So they have the respiratory pigment. So this respiratory pigment is the hemoglobin. Heme plus globin. Heme is the iron part, globin is the globular protein part. So they are made up of the four tetramer of the protein, two alpha chain polypeptide and 2 beta. This is all detail which you don't require to remember, but you must remember that red color of the blood is because of the RBC, and RBC are red in color because of the presence of the hemoglobin. What is hemoglobin? Hemoglobin is made up of heme and globin. Heme, iron. Globin is the protein part. Now when we we talk about the formed element, means I told you the two parts. So formed element is also 99% comprised of the RBC. Now, why do this RBC lose their nucleus on the maturity? They lose their nucleus because the nucleus comprised of the genetic material, they don't require to synthesize any protein. They are very much destined to their work, that is their respiration. They have to carry oxygen from the lungs and they have to transport it to the various means tissues, or you can say the organs. So they do not have to build any type of protein, so they do not require such type of genetic material in their body. So for that reason they lose their nucleus. But there is one small exception we will find. It is not same in the case of camel. They have the RBC in which the nucleus are present. Now when we talk about the red blood corpuscles, so red blood corpuscles or red blood cells, we had already discussed they are absent in the invertebrates. In all vertebrates except mammals, they are nucleated and biconvex. Now see, in mammals also, they are biconcave and enucleated. During the formation in the bone marrow, red blood cells have a nucleus. But what happened prior to their release into the bloodstream, they lose the nuclei. Just now I told you why do they lose the nuclei, because they do not require to perform any function. Now red blood cells, when we talk about, they have the respiratory pigment. This respiratory pigment is, we had already discussed multiple times, is called as the hemoglobin. Now when we talk about the hemoglobin, so it has the highest affinity for the oxygen. Now, why do this hemoglobin have the highest affinity to the oxygen? Because it comprises of iron in it, and as iron have the affinity for iron in its porphyrin group, you can see this heme group. So, this iron attracts the oxygen. So not only this, it is also giving red color, which we had already discussed. When we talk about the invertebrate, so directly in the case of the invertebrate, this respiratory pigment is dissolved into the plasma. Why? Because they don't have any type of the red blood cells. So these pigments are varied into the different animal, as we had discussed about the crustacean and snails. So crustacean and snails, they will have the hemocyanin. You will remember when we were talking about the respiration, I told you that in the case of the crustacean and some snails, their blood turns blue when it becomes oxygenated. Why? Because their respiratory pigment, hemocyanin, it is having copper. As we have the iron, they have the copper as a prosthetic group. So when they breathe, so this cyanin part, or you can say this copper part, get oxygenated and turns to the bright blue color. So their blood will be blue in color. Now hemoerythrin you will find in the plasma of lingula. It is a branchiopore. This hemoerythrin also imparts reddish violet color. Then chlorocruinin, it gives green color to the blood of certain sedentary marine annelids like Serpula. Now when we talk about the erythrocyte, hemoglobin. So see, you have to remember, I have discussed about the various respiratory pigment, hemoglobin, then hemocyanin, hemoerythrin, then chlorocruorins. So you have, what you have to remember, hemoglobin and hemoerythrin. These two will give hemoglobin to pure red color, hemoerythrin reddish violet color, hemocyanin will give a slight blue color, and chlorocrurin will give the green color. So you have to remember this, and also you have to remember the example hemoglobin most of the animal it is found, but it is very specific in the case of the mammal. Hemocyanin you will find into the snails. Hemoerythrin lingula is the example, which is a brachiopods. Then chlorochlorine you will find into the sedentary marine annelids. Serpula is the example. So you have to remember. So let us discuss about the hemoglobin. So when we talk about the hemoglobin, I told you it is made up of the protein, and four protein strands are there. Iron rich heme groups are there. When we talk about the hemoglobin molecule, so as it comprises of the four iron molecules, so it can bind with the four oxygen atom. So presence of oxygen turns the hemoglobin bright red color. When we talk about the lifespan, now see, they do not have their nucleus, so they cannot control, means whatever machinery is fit in their body will be means become spare one time. So for that particular reason, the RBC have approximate 120 days, that is the 4 month lifespan. Now iron, whatever part is present, that gets recycled into the liver and spleen. Then whatever globin part is there, that is also taken up. So the liver and spleen, they just recycle this RBC. They remove. It is not like that once the RBC is dead, so that will be eliminated from the body. No, that is broken down, and their whatever components are there, that are recycled. Now hormone erythropoietin, you need to remember this hormone, although the hemopoiesis means the formation of the blood takes place into the bone marrow, but it happens under the influence of the hormone which is made by the kidney. You need to remember erythropoietin. So this erythropoietin stimulates the production of the RBC into the red bone marrow. Student, this hormone is also get affected by the testosterone. Testosterone, you all know it very well that it is the male secondary sexual characteristic hormone. So means if the person will have the higher quantity of the testosterone, so for that particular time the more erythropoietin will form. So this is the reason the male have the slightly higher rate of the RBC as compared to the female. You might have seen the quantity of the red blood cell in the case of the male and the female differs, right? Why does it differ? The reason behind that is it differs because they do male do have the testosterone hormone which influence the more production of the erythropoietin, and that's why they have the more RBC. Now when we are not eating proper iron, what is going to be happen? What can be happen? Definitely hemoglobin बनने में problem होगा, right? So the number of hemoglobin will be get lesser. Now we will make up for the lack of iron in hemoglobin. If iron is not there, so many things can happen, like you can see that the hemoglobin will, as hemoglobin do not have the iron, it will not properly bind to the oxygen. You will feel suffocate. So one of the illegal that some top Olympic athletes have been caught using erythropoietin. What do this hormone do? So we all just learned that erythropoietin is the hormone which enhance, or you can say which stimulates the production of the red blood cell. So what these athletes, Olympic athletes, used to do to get more. Now see, if more iron or more RBC is there in your body, you are more energetic. More energetic, that means you can run more faster. So they used to take this type of blood. Now let us discuss about the second category. Red blood cells are called as erythrocytes. Now we are talking about the white blood cells. These white blood cells are called as the leukocytes. So when we talk about the leukocytes or white blood corpuscles, so they are the nucleated cell. See, when we are remembering it in the comparison, we need to remember that they are comprising of the nucleus. Now they are differentiated into the granulocyte and agranulocyte. We are going to discuss in detail about that. When we talk about the granulocytes, they have the lobulated nucleus and the numerous granules. Granules are the dot like structure in the cytoplasm. And when we talk about the agranulocyte, we know A means in science is the no granulocyte. They have the no granules into the cytoplasm. When we talk about the white blood cells, now their function, so their most important function is to fight against the disease. Now, how do they fight? They recognize the protein which is not present in our body. That means they can uh, check whether the protein which has entered in the body is self or non-self. If it is non-self, they can recognize it, they can fight it. We all are going to learn in detail about body defense in the third year, semester 5. But if you are interested to know, I have made a complete video series on the immunology. You can watch that. Then white cells, when we talk about, they are able to ooze out of the wall of the capillaries. Now see, you all remember when I was teaching you about the, when we were discussing about the red blood cells, I told you that in any case they cannot ooze out, they cannot leave the capillary. Why? Because they are little bit bigger in the diameter as compared to the capillary holes, or you can say the capillary sieve cannot pass because their diameter is approximate 7 nanometer. So for that particular reason, they cannot ooze out. But here in the case of the white blood cells, they can easily ooze out through the walls of capillary. Now, why do they ooze out? Why do they need to leave the capillaries? Because I told you they have a role in the defending. So if any microbe which is running, which is harmful for our body, is running to the tissue, so and they can catch, they can run behind that. So for that reason they go. So I told you already that they are differentiated as the granulocyte and agranulocyte. So let us discuss about the granulocyte. When we talk about the granulocyte, so based on the nuclear structure and affinity of the cytoplasmic granules, means which type of their granules are present. They are either acidic or basic. So three types they have. Neutrophils. Now see, this is all on the basis of the dyes which we are using for the purpose of the staining. Okay, so when we talk about the neutrophil, they don't show any type of affinity for acidic or the basic dye. So they have the uniformly distributed granules into the cytoplasm. When we talk about the nucleus, so the nucleus is 3 to 5 lobes, and all this are separated by the narrow strands of the chromatin. When we talk about the eosinophil, you need to remember eosinophil is also called as the acidophils, and they show an affinity to the acid dyes such as eosin, which imparts the red color to the cells. Now when we talk about the cytoplasm, so as they are granulocyte, their cytoplasm comprise of the granules, and we need to remember that granules are acidic in nature. Now let us discuss about nucleus. As we have discussed about nucleus in the neutrophil is having 3 to 5 lobes. Here the nucleus is bilobed. Okay. Now basophils have the very few granules which are sparsely scattered into the cytoplasm. They have the affinity to the basic dyes. This will give the blue color. See, eosinophil red color, neutrophil no color, and basophil will give the blue color. You need to remember in this way. Now when we talk about the nucleus, so nucleus will not show the proper lobe, but it will show the twisting. So nucleus is irregularly twisted. Now let us discuss about the agranulocyte. Now agranulocyte are the cells which have the homogeneous cytoplasm without any granule. Homogeneous, term homogeneous means having the same type of structure. Okay, so they don't have the granules in it. Now when we talk about the category, as we all have discussed the three types into the granulocytes, granulocytes are also of two types, lymphocytes and the monocytes. Now see, we can make the table of it so can remember very well. Let us discuss about the lymphocytes. So when we talk about the lymphocytes, there are two type of lymphocytes, small lymphocytes and the large lymphocyte. When you will go to the further step, means the higher class, you will learn that the lymphocytes, they are B lymphocyte and T lymphocyte. And if you want to learn the detail of it, you can watch cells of immune system. I had already explained about the lymphocytes in detail in that. The small lymphocytes, you will find they have the large round nucleus which almost occupies. Now see this, you will find have the sparsely a little quantity of the cytoplasm, and when we talk about the large lymphocytes, so they will have the more cytoplasm. When we talk about the monocytes, so they have either ovoid or the kidney shaped nucleus. The cytoplasm is more abundant, means having more quantity in relation to the nucleus. Now when we talk about the quantity, means how much amount of this white blood cells are there. So in men there is approximately 5,000 to 9,000 leukocytes in per millimeter cube of blood. So that means the small quantity must have this many of the leukocytes. Now, what is the primary function? As we had already discussed, they are very much helpful in the case of fighting against the various harmful or microorganism which invades in our body and other tissue. Now, when we talk about their action, so how do they fight? So either they can do the phagocytosis. Phagocytosis term to be noted, children. It means engulfing the foreign object. Okay, or you can say eating up whatever is coming which is harmful for our body. So they engulf it, they kill it, or they can make the antibodies. Antibodies are the immunoglobulin, or you can say it's a type of defense protein which can blocks the microorganism. Then the next component is the platelets. Now platelets is also called as the thrombocyte. Thrombocyte, why? Because it is going to perform, or it has role into the thrombosis. So when we talk about the platelets, so these are spindle shaped cells which are found in the blood of all vertebrates. Now see, special in the case of the mammals, we have the thrombocytes modified forms. They are present into the fragments. Okay, mammals do not have the proper thrombocytes. We have the platelets, which are the fragments of the uh, uh, megakaryotes, or you can say the thrombocytes. Now, when we talk about the size, so they are very small and they are derived from the megakaryocytes because they lack the nucleus. They have the very short lifespan, approximate 10 days. But when we talk about the thrombocytes, so they have the clear cytoplasm or round or oval nucleus. When we talk about the role, thrombocyte and platelets both have the role into the clotting of blood. In the case of mammal, as I told you, we have the platelets. So these platelets are formed inside the bone marrow. When we talk about the size, so size is very small, approximate half the size of the red blood cells. When we talk about function, so how do they do the blood clotting? By the process of the coagulation. Coagulation means making the clots, making the net-like structure. So they coagulate, or you can say they aggregate the blood particles. In the men, there are approximate 250,000 platelets per millimeter cube of blood. So this is about the formed element plasma. I had already discussed. Now what is the blood clotting? So platelets, they aggregate at the side of wound. Now this wound as well as the platelets, they will release a chemical signal. This chemical signal will stimulate the thrombin production. Now this thrombin will convert whatever protein fibrinogen present in the blood into the sticky fibrin. All this will bind and this will form a clot-like structure. Now, let us take one question now. Which blood cell transport oxygen? Answer is the red blood cells. Why? Because it comprises of the hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the respiratory pigment which supports for you can say which has the affinity for the oxygen binding. Now next question. If a person has defect in the gene of the fibrinogen, so what will happen? Just now we have seen fibrinogen has the role in the coagulation. So the person will have the impaired function of the blood clotting. Now let us discuss about the function. Till now we all have seen the components of the blood and we all had already discussed that all the components are very important. So all the most, or you can say the chief function of the blood is to serve as the mean of transportation. Now what it is going to transport? It is going to transport food and oxygen. Now it will be given to each and every body cell. And not only this, it will carry out whatever waste is been produced by the body cells, tissues, organs. So the chief function is transportation of food and oxygen and removal of waste, you can say. So not only this, I had already discussed blood carries the hormones. Now hormone we all are going to learn in detail into the next class. Next class means the in the TY B.Sc you have the entire endocrinology unit where we will be talking about hormones in detail. But you must know that hormones are the remote control of the body and they act, means control various function including your mood and everything. So it has a very important role in our body, and if a little bit change of hormone occurs, it can completely change your personality. So this hormone, the most important things are carried by the blood. When we talk about the white blood cells, so it produces the antibodies and it also helps as the defensive mechanism of our body. So overall immunity controlled by the blood, we can say, which protects our body from the invading pathogen. And not only this, they whatever antibody is being produced, this transportation is also carried out by the blood. It also involves in the regulation of the body temperature. Blood have the slightly higher temperature, and because of it, our body temperature is regulated. And as we can regulate our body temperature, mammals are called as the endotherm. Means we can maintain in any climate our body temperature to a standard value, that is 37 degrees Celsius. So this is all about the blood. See students, we must remember about the blood that if there is a change into the blood component, so the change or if the blood cells get transformed means will get change its position or will have the changes in its structure, it can cause the blood cancer. I am attaching the link of blood cancer here, and if you are interested to know, because as it is not part of your syllabus right now, I will not discuss it with you. But what we need to remember, if the blood cell will lost its function or will change its structure, it can cause the blood cancer, which I had already discussed into the given link. Okay, so this is all about the blood. So for this note, for right now, I will stop. So that's it for the day.